All right, folks, let's finish up chapter 10 and let's talk now about the algorithms, the almighty algorithms, and their fight against the humans in the insights game. Algorithms, in many cases, can do a much more efficient and rational job than a team rather of human beings trying to accomplish the same task would. Like saying the word team as opposed to term. The downside to algorithms, though, is that by and large, they lack the context that a human mind brings to a data set. While algorithms bring you the data, if you are seeking to build useful insights, it is you who must represent it and interpret it. The AI can only give you the data. They can't provide the insights. The insights are inferred by human beings that know how to look at the data, look at the environment in which that data is in, and try to make some explanations and rationalizations. There's three key elements that you bring to the table when you interpret data sets looking for insights. There's the personal input, the fact that you have lived experience, you understand emotion. It's key to understanding how to build insights for your clients from the data you collect. It's giving a sense of the why of the way that the numbers are in terms of who we are as humans. Then there's the cultural input, the ability to assess how human behavior and societal traditions collide. What does it mean for a certain region of the country or a certain country as opposed to another country? What's the court of public opinion in the current time and place and space? And thinking broadly and deeply, you are able to think beyond the specific data and into similar or overlapping categories. This lateral thinking brings breadth to your insights and can sometimes uncover useful and unexplored opportunities for your client. It's being able to think beyond the numbers in a way that it leads you to thinking about things that the numbers can't even begin to try to interpret because the data for that isn't there, but that data could lead to something brand new. Now, 4 key advantages when it comes to the power of insight for a salesperson. First off, persuasion. When you present a media plan or other product backed by solid insights, they can't say that what you are pitching is wrong or it's not well thought out. When you provide these inferences based on the things that you have seen in your research, it gives you a bit of leverage when it comes to making a strong case for the deductions that you've made. Market differentiation. Nothing is more convincing to your client than custom insights about their specific, immediate business needs. Why is this information important and why is it important specifically to them? Client retention and growth. When you bring data and insights to your clients during pitches or regular meetings, you become a resource for them. You become a de facto extension of their own marketing team. You become a thought leader for them. And then finally, for yourself, a career path. An insight development skill set is highly beneficial to many roles, both at brands and at agencies. And you can expand your future options when you develop this knowledge. If you have a way of being able to interpret data, make observations and insights from that data, that is valuable not just in the advertising world, but for companies when it comes to their own marketing, when it comes to their public relations, in many different aspects when it comes to the business world and even to the nonprofit world for those that are interested in that realm. Now, some tools and processes for insight. Where is the data? There's a few places to look. There's public tools that are available. Public tools are those that are based on massive data sets that have filters and research options available to the general public. Things that are out there in the open domain, things that are freely available to those that do research online from various organizations. The stuff that everyone has access to, you have access to as well. might as well make use of it. Also, major digital platform tools. Most large digital platforms like Google, Facebook, and Twitter have some kind of data tool that is open and free to use. It's just knowing how to find that data and knowing how to properly interpret it. With search, a good tool to use here is Google Trends. This tool allows you to see the relative search volume of any keyword over a period of time. So you can take a look at that and see how things have evolved over a certain period. With video, YouTube in particular, YouTube Trends, you can learn what videos or types of content have been trending in a particular category, often with editorial content explaining why. And then there's the videos themselves, what's trending as far as the actual videos. This shows what videos are currently most popular, and that's something that's on just about everybody's homepage when they visit YouTube, so that's very easy to see. Collecting and categorizing, a process that needs to be put into place. Handling large data sets. First, filter out anything that won't help your client meet their business objectives. I don't care how cool it is. I don't care how much you geek out about it. If it's not relevant, then it's not relevant and you don't include it. Screen captures are useful and easy for grabbing images, graphs, other visually presented data. This is really helpful when you're making presentations or even just printing things out and showing them to a client or a prospect to help them to understand certain things that are happening. Keep all of your data in one place. Keep it in a specific folder, whether it's a paper manila folder or a folder on your desktop on your computer. One thing you may want to do, especially for those of you that use Windows, is learn how to use the Details tab. This allows you to add metadata to files, and that can be helpful when searching for content in your operating system. There's similar sorts of features with Macintosh and with Linux operating systems. So if you can learn how to do that, it makes it useful in when you're doing a search for files. You're not just searching for a file name, but you might be able to search with some of that metadata. Always retain the source of any data that you use and be able to cite the source of any data that you present to a client. It adds credibility that you didn't just pull the numbers from out of the air somewhere or from some seedy website. You want some sort of credibility to say, this organization is the one that produced this information. Defining data categories. There's no set group of categories to use, but your data will indicate how to break it out. In other words, it's going to be different from case to case to case. There's going to be certain information that's going to be valuable for client A, certain others for client B, sometimes even if they're in the same industry. It's all a matter of what is really going to be to the best advantage for your client to know in order to help them to be able to make great decisions for their business overall and for you specifically for their advertising purposes. Each project will have its own set of categories that the data breaks down into, and that is already the start of developing insights. So the fact that you even know what categories you are looking for, that in and of itself is an insight. It helps you to be able to focus on the things that are really important. There will be some data that does not fit into any particular bucket or subfile, if you want to think of it that way. You can always have an other category, miscellaneous, a random, that doesn't necessarily fit nicely into this particular pocket, but nevertheless, it's still valuable information that could actually influence some of those other main topics of interest. When do you discard data? Well, 3 times. When the data is obvious. The book gives the example, people like ice cream in the summer. No, duh. You don't need to have that documented. The data is peripheral to the client's needs. In other words, it's interesting, but it's really not fundamental to helping a client meet its goals. And then the data is too broad. In other words, the information, while it's interesting, may not necessarily be unique to that particular company or the particular experience that they're in. It could just be a coincidence, a freak accident of the way that that information correlates, but they don't necessarily actually relate to each other. Often what is not there in terms of the data and the information is as important as what is. If there's things that you're not seeing come out as a result of your research, a good question to ask depending on that thing is, why is that? And from that, make some observations and some insights. Crafting insights is both an art and a science. Data does not equal insights. Data is the foundation for your insights, not the insights themselves. We talked about that in the beginning of the chapter. The numbers is not the story in and of itself. It's the interpretation of those numbers and data and what you should do with that that is important. Insights should be expressible in just a sentence or two. You don't want your insights to be a long essay or narrative. It's going to take too much to read it, too much information getting in the way of what's important. Keep the data you show to a relative minimum. Keep remaining data in an appendix for those clients who wish to do a deep dive. So, have good summaries with the most important data, and then if they want the extra stuff, you can provide that to them. Because there may be some things that they find especially important that, maybe that extra information might be helpful. Follow the insight with an implication. The implication can be a specific recommendation for how your clients can act on the insight or be a provocative question. So in other words, what's the impact here? What's the thing that we really need to consider in light of this information we have and the inferences that we are making? Looking at things through the human lens, don't be afraid to move out of the realm of business speak when you present your insights. Your clients are human, and humans respond to narratives, and your insights and implications are just that. They're insights and their implications. In other words, there is a margin of error. There's also the fact that sometimes the information we have can either be augmented by or distorted by the human emotion and human reaction that we all tend to have. We can all interpret the same data in different ways, and sometimes more than one train of thought is valid, and sometimes one's train of thought is more valid than someone else's. So be willing to work in and embrace that margin of error. 4 questions to ask when building insights. First, what are you trying to do? This is you talking to a client, asking them, what is it that they are really trying to do? Who are you trying to motivate? In other words, who's your target audience? What's your demographic? Who is it that needs to be impacted by what you have and what you want to say? How do you want people to react? What action does your client wants to see? What do they want to see from its target users? And why should people care about all of this? So this is where the insights really come into play. They need to have a reason to engage, and as a result, this is something that will create something that makes that compelling argument for the target audience as to why this particular business is going to be relevant to them, and perhaps the audience should respond to this business in some way, walking through the doors, making a purchase, whatever the case may be. Solutions, not campaigns. One of the key strengths of insights as compared to data or standard sales pitches is that they can inform far more than an advertising campaign. So here we are trying to process information in such a way that it's more of an educated look at how it is that we craft a message to an audience, as opposed to just putting out something that hasn't had a lot of data and observation backed behind it. Certainly, your insights should set up immediate campaigns that produce media sales for you, but strong insights can lead to new products, rebrands, or entire platforms that your client can develop. In other words, you might be the idea person, not just for the advertising, but for a whole new revenue stream for your client. And how valuable will they see you as a result of that? Some ways that you can build insights. There's sample processes in the textbook that you can take a look at. Again, this is kind of a brainstorming sort of thing in developing a process and a way to come up with some of these insights based on looking at data and making observations. It's always going to be different depending on the client, depending on the situation, depending on the area that you're in. But again, this is that idea that this sort of practice is both an art and a science. There is a process to it, but that process is going to yield different things depending on the situation that you're in. And that's where the artistry comes into play, and you're being able to use your human condition in addition to the data that you have available in order to craft these observations and insights for a client that's going to be helpful to them. So there you go. There's chapter 10. What insights do you have? Let's talk about them when we get together in class.